live. Welcome to Monday Night Domains. It is so great to see everyone on this beautiful Monday. I am personally having a great day. Not but I am personally having a wonderful day. Dad, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Let's see. Let's do our little show maintenance. We're sharing this on LinkedIn and on YouTube and on X. I'm finally starting to say X first instead of
I'm not.
Twitter.
I'm still. Does that make me old? Do I count as old because I say it as Twitter?
But let me like and
If
retweet.
beautiful people wants to like and retweet the space, that would be really great. That means we get more people in here, we get more people talking, we get more questions asked, and we get more domain knowledge out in the real world.
Yeah, let me have my profile here. And there it is. Live Restream. I love it. Maybe I should promote it.
Hey, maybe you should. I think we're promotable. We're fun. We're fun to talk to, fun to listen to, right?
I'm gonna reach age 21 to what's the upper limit of our age range we want to promote to?
I don't 65.
Let's see. I'm just gonna hit promote post. I just spent $25, Julie. I have no idea what it's gonna do, but
hopefully it'll
right,
turn us great.
I spent $25 to promote the post. I liked it, and
you
all
guys,
right.
Well, I not spend $25. I was gonna say everyone should do the same, but no one should spend $25, obviously, because that is 2 domain names, which we can turn into a lot of money.
Oh my gosh, I'm so proud.
You're so good. You're such a good dad. Sorry y'all aren't seeing me right now. I'm trying to multitask. If anyone wants to tell me why my MacBook camera doesn't work on Chrome, that'd be great to do. So do with that info what you will.
There you go. Well, let's see. Whether you're watching us live or you're watching the replay, thanks for joining Monday Night Domains. Thanks to our sponsor, Freename, who sponsors this weekly talk. A lot of the Freename talks are done in Europe time. So we do this one for U.S. investors and other global investors or people who are up at 3 a.m. in Europe. We talk about the state of domains, what's going on. Web 2 domains, Web 3 domains. My name is Paige Howe. I've been investing in domains for now 1997, 28 years. 28 years. I bought my first domain name in 1997. I probably bought my first domain name for resale in 1999. Domain names are an asset class. On average, that we know of, just reported wholesale 300,000 to 600,000 a day are reported sales. There's 150 million domain names registered in .com and .net. There's multi-billion-dollar companies in the domain space. There's private equity firms in the domain space with multiple billion-dollar companies. It's the foundation of what you do online. It's both your functional website, literally your connection to the internet, and it's your brand. And that's what makes domains special. It's functional and it's, dare I say, fashionable, Julie? It matters what you call yourself. Do you think it matters?
Okay, listen. As someone who is a big, I've been told that I make a good first impression sometimes. And I think that comes before you even make a first impression of, hey, I'm Julie, I'm, X, Y, and Z. They're looking at your outfit. And before they even look at your business, they're looking at your domain name. It's all a beautiful little package of this thing we call branding, and it is very, very, very important. And you only get one chance to make a first impression. So I would call a domain name fashionable, especially if they are fashion domains.
Yeah, and I think early on, there may have been kind of an anti-fashion sense. I'll give you an example. Early on, it made a difference whether you capitalized the domain name or not. And so the idea of all lower caps in your domain name was kind of a signal that you were not necessarily a hacker, you know what I mean? But that, yes, most people are used to writing stuff in, upper and lower case with your, your first letter of keywords capitalized. But if you were doing it lower, that kind of meant that, hey, you were talking to computers, you know what I mean? And that's what a domain name does, is you talk to computers. Computers do not understand language. You cannot talk to a computer. You have to talk with a domain name that gets converted into a number. Go, Julie.
Are you saying at the beginning of all this domaining, it was better to not capitalize your domain because it made you look too outward consumer facing and not enough inward tech?
Well, what happened was, like, if you were setting your name servers or sometimes even your email address or something, and you would put in your settings and you would put in caps and it would reject it, or it would say error, and you're like, oh, I need to do all lower. And so it kind of introduced all lowercase as a thing, you know what I mean, that would signal, because at the time, this is now in today's market, it's big guns win. Like you say, fashion wins. Show your power, flex. But back then, you almost flexed in the way that you were anti-establishment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think it's stupid.
There you go. Maybe that's why they didn't get a lot of women involved back then. It was all these dork guys that got involved. You know what I mean?
It's still a lot of dork guys. I got news for you.
Gotcha. So, Julie, we spent a week looking for domain names. Julie, tell us about your project 100 to 1 million.
For y'all who don't know, we are investing $100 into domain names and trying to eventually turn it into a $1 million domain sale because, we're really trying to get the new younger people into domains, and we cannot afford to buy a oneword.com right off the bat right now. So that's why we can't invest in real estate, because we can't afford to buy a house. And so we're like, okay, can you really start in domains with, $100, a reasonable amount of money to invest, and see if can you work hard and flip it? It's still a valid way of making money. And I think it is. So we spent a week looking for domains. We looked a lot at expireddomains.net. That was a really good go-to. We got some good auctions. We just found I think we found some good stuff.
But in total, how many domains do you think we looked at compared to the 7 or 8 that you bought?
Oh, a lot. So even I have a list that was our short list.
Right.
And it's probably about 150 names, and only about 7 or 8 of those would I have considered for this project. Now, there's some solid names on there, but we're having to be picky because A, we are starting with such little capital, and B, we want to keep you guys invested on this journey. That means we have to flip these things fast. We can't just sit around and park them and wait for someone who happens to need that name to come along. So we had to be really picky, and we kind of had to buy with the intention to sell and already have a sales plan kind of in mind whenever we were buying.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons there's 150million.com domain names registered is almost any name that you buy could sell. If one other person wanted it badly, had the money, knew that you owned it, and knew how they could buy it. And because the multiples, when, like Julie said, you buy them and you put a sign up for sale, are so high, you might put a name that you registered for $11 up for $3,000. That return is so high, most of the time you wait a month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months to get what we call a retail sale, meaning a sale at the name's full value. The only thing you have to do in the interim is buy more. You think you convince yourself, I've got to buy more to get one sale. So before you've actually sold a name, you're buying more. It's like you have a store, you know what I mean? And you open your store and you haven't had any customers come in, and you're like, oh, I need more inventory. I need more inventory. I need more inventory. And that's what most domain investors do. And the reason I know this is if you go to some of the places to buy domains, if you go to Name Pros is a great way. I send Julie some posts. where different people would have spent the last year buying names, and they'll have a list of 150 names that they'll sell for $15 to $35. And most of them aren't terrible, but they're in what I kind of call the danger zone. They're good enough to register. They're not terrible. They might sell,
but they need the right buyer.
And do you really want that to be the one that, by giving Julie a scarce amount of money, $100 to start, it's her money, but I mean, making her start with that, there's an opportunity cost that says, I'm not comparing this name that I just found as to whether it might sell. It's, do I want it to be one of my 8 to 10? That very valuable spot, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, we have that's starting small, and that's kind of what it might be a hindrance to, the younger domainers who can only start small. We have to be educated in what we're doing, and that's why it's really important for, I'm going to say us, we're domainer. I'm a domainer, us
well,
as
Julie, you're not a domainer until you've sold something.
Oh, but I did.
Oh!
We'll get to that.
You make me so proud. You make me so proud.
No, I'm putting myself in the we of domainers have to be able to do a good job at educating. We don't want to give all of our secrets, obviously,
right,
but we have to be able to educate young people on, what is a domain? What can you look for if you need to sell immediately? What can you look for? I mean, I feel like there might be different types of reasons for buying. Maybe that's something I'll make in the next video of, like, if you're buying a domain because you need to sell it now, that's one tier of domain. If you're buying a name to put it in your portfolio to eventually sell in 10 years, that is a whole other different type of domain. If you're buying a name now, if you're really investing the time and money into a domain to then develop it and then flip it for a very high, I mean, those are all different kinds of domains. And so you need to buy different kinds of domains based on where you are in your journey. So maybe that's on us as domainers to educate other people.
Yeah, and to slow that down a little bit, just in case, the other things that may happen are, I would say most domainers feel like there's a pressure to buy. Like someone's out in the car honking the horn, you're in a store, you better go, let's go. Or the anxiety and the indecision makes you just say, I'm just going to buy something and it's not that much money, and so we'll see what happens. And I would encourage anyone who's starting off, maybe you're playing this contest at home, whether you already have thousands of dollars invested in domains, and I want to encourage you to pick 100 that you're going to be accountable to. You're going to write it down in a spreadsheet or in a notebook and say, what happened to this $100? And the person I learned this from was Ron Jackson, who's the editor of DN Journal, probably the best online resource. He tells the story of the domain industry for the last 20 years. And early on, we were both starting out, and we were both on a forum, DN Forum, and he mentioned that he kept a book of every dollar he spent, because you could easily just say, oh, I spent that, but it was out of my credit card, it was out of my pocket money, and you could just let it go. But no, you keep it and you look at it and you say, what am I doing? Go ahead.
I think that's treat it like a business. If you're wanting to use domain investing as a business, you have to treat it like so, in which case you track every single expense. You're not like me going to the thrift store. I'm like, oh, this top is $6 and this top is $7, and that's only $6 and $7, and I'm buying them both. And then I end up spending $150 and end up getting too many clothes. Like, no, you need to track exactly what you're doing. That way you know how much you have left to spend and how much you have to reinvest. And
it's okay to make a column for names that you just like. You just bought them because you liked them, and you're not hurting anyone buying a name for $11. And you might be a collector. You might be collecting the name because you might build it. You might be collecting the name because you want to do a partnership. And it's kind of like, you show up with the name, you're kind of in control of the partnership. So it's totally fine. But don't also then say, no, I'm here to, make money. So anyway, so Julie, you sent me a list last week. The first list you sent me, we looked for short names, like 5 and 6 letter names. And you looked at names that had different components of them. And I was trying to find that list.
I have it. want to share the screen because not all of your computer stuff.
You don't want to share the
No,
screen?
because I might buy these. I said
What's
no
that?
because I might buy these.
Okay. Well, let's do some education. Let's talk about Carols.com.
Oh, that was an experience I got my gotcha moment. Luckily, I got my gotcha moment before I'd invested any money, but I definitely
So Julie sent me a list, and at the top of the list was Carols.com, like Christmas carols. And of course, it's a one-word domain name. And whether you think it could be worth $1 million or not, it's definitely a one-word name. There's a lot of scarcity there. There's some desirability. It would be a great name to own. So Julie sent it to me, and she had a list of some other short names that she doesn't want to share with you. So you're gonna have to pay her for her suggestions.
You know what I will say? I can say this one because I liked this name a lot, and someone else has registered it. So someone else read my mind. But you didn't like it.
That's right.
I think that's wrong. It was MrSav.com. And I feel like that is a great name. So I'm going to let the chat deliberate on that one. M-R-A-V, Mr. Sav. And I feel like that is such a good, brandable domain. Any person on earth could be Mr. Sav. I could be a car wash. I could be literally anybody.
But what does Sav mean? S-A-V mean? I never thought of that.
So I could have bought that. That was the only thing to come to mind. Are you kidding? So had I just said that, you would have told me to buy it, and I would have bought it, and someone else.
No, I still don't think I would have told you. But for me, because we have a company in the space, Sav.com, registrar run by, but Mr. So like Sav, would you say that? Like, oh, dude, who are you, Mr. Sav?
I mean, let's think about Mr. Premium.
Okay, that's Mr. Premium.
Good
day, good dollar. Good day, good morning, good night, good dollar. Okay. Okay. So let's see what people think. So the reason I wasn't a fan of Mr. Sav was I did feel, Julie, like, don't take it personally. Remember, domains are not puppies. Puppies need to be, or cats. Domains are not kitties. Kitties need to be loved. Kitties need to be cared for. You don't let kitties outside alone. But domains are not kitties. You can let them go and let them be orphaned and let them be. So I just thought that it might not have enough natural buyers for us to sell it in the next month for your contest.
I disagree. I feel like anyone on earth could have bought it, and I get that would have been a lot difficult for us to find lead generation for, but it could have been anybody, and in that it had inherent value, which means other domainers would have liked it at the very least.
Gotcha. I can see we're going to talk about this more than once.
I'm a little bit scared about that because.
So Julie's whole list, she went to check them again, and one of them was gone, and it was Mr. Sav. Now, I will tell you this. You should check in 5 days and see if it's still taken. That? Some people can buy domains and then give them back in 5 days if they don't like them. And you can only do it for a small amount, but it is worth checking. So anyway. But let's talk about carols. What did you learn from Carols.com?
Showed me that expireddomains.net should really work on their font because it was not Carols.com. It was whenever you put a capital I and it looks like an L. It was Carois. Either two or what?
Caro is, yeah. And they didn't do it on purpose. They have an AI tool that tries to take names. And Esteban has the same tool, and it does what's called camel casing, meaning it takes the domain name that's all lower, and it tries to make proper words out of it. And in this case, it showed it like it was carols with the, and you have to be careful when you're looking at names. One of the hints that this wasn't Carols.com would have been the fact that it wasn't registered in any other extensions.
Well,
Whereas,
oneword.com should not be available.
Right. And then, but it is important when you're checking names of cities that there are unscrupulous domainers out there that will put on name pros NashvilleTourism.com, and they could put one of the I's as an L, and they could just figure it's your fault for not researching. GoDaddy, when they put their expired names up, again, they're not being not malignant. They're not being malicious. They're not being malicious. They're just putting up a list of 50,000 domains a day. You know what I mean? And the other thing that can happen is two V's, if your font isn't big enough, can look like a W. Two R's can look like an M. And the only reason I know this is I've made these mistakes.
That's so heartbreaking because you get all excited. At least, hopefully, the worst thing I can imagine happening with that is not realizing you've already found a buyer, or even getting to the point where you're trying to push it to the buyer, and like where it makes you look bad, like you were being an unscrupulous domainer when really that guy.
Yeah.
So
last week we had bought two names, Wales Blog and Scottsdale Estate Attorney, and we're going to outbound those this week, right, Julie? I say we, I mean you. And then we started looking, and I was probably the no, and Julie was the yes, let's buy these, including Mr. Sav. But we did end up finding some nuggets in, can I say what category we found the nuggets in?
Yes, but don't say the name, because
Okay, so we thought that AI was probably the number one thing going right now. And mostly it's because of .ai domain names, but those cost $170 for 2 years. So that probably isn't in our budget now, but it will be later. So I started looking for names that have dropped in the last 30 days that either began with AI or ended with AI. And at this level, I did add a lot of names to the watch list, and I sent it to Julie and said, check these out. What do you think? But there was one that I really sent her, and I said, this one, most of the time we talk about you should take a half hour to see if a name, you like it when you first see it because you're looking at so many terrible names that one that's kind of good stands out and you fall in love with it. But do you still feel that way a half hour, an hour later? But this one I thought was, and it was AI, and it was a gambling term. It was a 2-word name with AI and then a gambling term right after it. So should we say the name? Let's say the name. Maybe someone wants to buy it.
There's a chance we already have a buyer for it. We can say it.
We may have a prospect for it already. Well, we'll say this. We'll say the second one.
No, that's the better one. Because what we also learned on this adventure is don't stop looking. So Dad calls me because he found this amazing name, right? And I was like, okay, I'm on my computer. Looking at we start, because I'm like, how are some of these available? We start scrolling, and about 2 or 3 pages later, we found what I think both in domain terms and in real world terms is a better domain name. Because we didn't, and we found, I'm going to say this one because we didn't end up buying it and probably not going to, but we found AITrueLove.com. So like that.
Oh, you really like that one. You really like it.
I'm going to buy it. Who knows? Maybe, well, no. It was very good. You know, it was cute. It would be on brand for the project for me to buy that because we've joked about my love life on here. And if you ever need a joke, my love life is the one. But no, we found another one. Let's say the first one that we found.
Okay.
We got AIBaccarat.com. So that was exciting.
And I had to tell Julie that is a card game, and it's the card game that James Bond plays.
Yeah, there's a chance I didn't know what that was. I'm a solitaire kind of girl, or a...
Oh!
See, Dad can search faster.
You gotta search faster. How do you spell solitaire?
SOLITAIRE.
IT?
Yeah, I think. But there's a chance that since you have to ask how to spell it, it means it's not that great of a name.
Well, it's not as great as it would be if you didn't, but it's still a pretty good name. Now, I'm searching at GoDaddy, and I hate to say it, GoDaddy, but you are terrible. I will not trust you because I typed the name in and you're trying to sell me a bunch of other stuff. You're trying to ask me to do a survey. You're trying to ask me to build an AI website. And all I wanted to know was whether this domain name is available. So GoDaddy, you're of no use to me.
Sale for $3,000.
2866, you're right. The XYZ is available. All right, so that's not available. So anyway, so
AI Solitaire $3,000 because we're selling.
Yeah. So anyway, so I told her that the other thing about Baccarat is gambling names seem to do well. As a word, I think it's one of the top 200 or 300 words in domains. You know what I mean, in terms of a gambling word, because for most sophisticated gamblers, the most money is spent gambling on Baccarat because it's the one that supposedly gives the house the least amount of advantage over you. So if you're playing with the most amount of money, and the percentages favor the house always, but they favor the house a little bit less in this game. So the big whales, the people that are betting $10,000 a hand, $100,000 a hand, you know, those, they'll play this game. So I thought the idea of AI, which is a huge word, plus this word, I thought it was a $20,000 domain name. Now, the stats don't seem to show it. It's not registered in that many extensions, but I just think when I see it, that's one of those names that it's scarce because it's got AI, which is maybe one of the top 10 prefixes going right now. And then you have Baccarat, which I think is one of the top 300 names at the end because it's a popular gambling term. And so I thought it was worth it. So I recommended it to Julie. And she wasn't sure, but she's got it now. So that's in Julie's stable right now.
I think if we had the time to wait 2 years, it could be a $20,000 domain name.
Right, but I think it's also the type of name where, like, I think Mr. Sav, not to pick on Mr. Sav, but would be a hard one to sell to another domainer because it comes with maybe some work to find an end user to turn it into money now. Whereas I think AI Baccarat is on the face of it, just like it's got sticker, you know, it's got face value. You know what I mean? It's because if you took the top 10,000 words, and I've done it, and put AI in front of them, 99% of them are taken. I mean, and we saw what was available, you know, AI Greyhound or AI, you know, just all kinds of weird words. And even though they were English words, you know, I mean, they weren't that popular. And to see Baccarat pop up, I thought was amazing. So I'm encouraging Julie to hold out for a big price, but that's one of her portfolio.
And so I like another one in our portfolio a little bit better. So, yeah.
Well, let's talk about the one that I think could be $1 million brand. And then we'll close the video part of the show, and then we'll go to
X.
X.
We're gonna talk about that one on X because we got 28 minutes, and we're at 28 minutes, and 2 minutes is not long enough to talk about this name.
All right,
we got a good one, especially for me, because.
Okay, well then let's talk about you. Did you say you were a domainer? You have sold a
domain.
Tell us about it.
We got. Let's see. I don't want to say too much because I want the person who I sold it to might want to come up on the space later, whenever we're after. Right. But we got some great advice, and we found some good search terms, and so we sold 3 names all together for some money.
How much?
We made $100, right? And we spent. I'll have to do that. I have the exact on my Excel sheet, right. But we spent about $30. And we sold them for $100, so we're currently up $70, so we can buy more names. And that is my first sale as a domainer. Because I've sold Dad's names, or I haven't sold Dad's names. I've tried to. You know, I've done other work to be like the secondary kind of person. But I've never actually sold. So we're gonna have to teach Julie how to push names. That's gonna be the next tutorial in the Dad Julie tutorial box.
That's right. So the things that we'll talk about next week are, what do you do when you buy a domain? You want to pick a landing page for it. You want to decide where to list it. I think you also want to make your own notes about why you bought it and what your strategy and expectations are. You never know as much about a domain name as right before you buy it. That's when you say, oh, I'll remember what I was thinking, but sometimes you don't, you know what I mean? And we'll talk about where to put the landing page, whether to make, but the 3 names that Julie had are gone. So we can't talk about those. We'll have to get 3 more names. And so Julie, before we close, you started with $100. And now
I started with $100. We spent. I have the math on a different sheet. I'm not going to bother dealing with my. Approximately, we spent 80.
Okay.
So we're already in the positive. So we just made 100 more. So.
No, you made 70 more. If we tell them we made 100, they're going to be no, because you had to pay 10 for the
70. We're positive 70. We did. I mean, so I think that brings us back to our 100 that we started with, except for.
Now, here's the way I would look at it. Your 100 is turned into 170, and this is very important. You had $20 left from your original 100, right? Now you've got 100 in cash, so you have $120 of cash, and you have $50 worth of domains. Which means you are like 60% cash. Most domain investors think they have to be 100% in domains.
No.
But you don't, because then you don't have any money for what comes along that could be exceptional,
honestly,
right?
This was the biggest step that I was hoping. I feel like since we made this first step, now we have wiggle room and we can hold back for when we do find that perfect domain, like the one we're going to talk about on Twitter.
Right, that we don't. All right. Well, listen, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you on Twitter on the app.